Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Five Drinks to Midnight, Quarantine Edition. Today we're talking Jacob Tschetter, New York, on-premise specialist for William Grant and Sons. But before we do, like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Thanks. Thanks so much for joining us for Five Drinks to Midnight, whatever comes first. Thank you so much. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm absolutely stoked to drink whiskey and talk with you as well, obviously. I felt that was
Of course, absolutely. I'm really excited for this. I mean, Dana's been pushing this one for a while, so I love her to death. But yeah, I'm really, really super excited.
Her last name is very true because she is dynamite.
She is. So I guess the first thing is, what are we drinking first? What's our first drink?
Well, we are going to start with our Hudson Bright Lights Big Bourbon. Let me just adjust this light so you're not getting all glare. This is it is the new version of the baby bourbon that we had. So this guy is, as opposed to being a blend of 1 to 3 year old whiskey, we've actually aged it up. It's about 3 to 4 years old now. And so that's kind of been one of the larger visions that we've had, is to age the whiskey out more. I mean, being the first whiskey distillery in New York State post-prohibition, and also for being grain to glass and only sourcing New York store grains and never actually sourcing our whiskey from anywhere else, it takes 4 things to make great whiskey: water, grain, yeast, and time. And so we're getting to that point now. You're going to be seeing older Hudson as time goes on.
Excellent. And again, I love the new packaging. I think it's so fucking sleek and beautiful. So I'm so excited to crack this open with and share a dram with you tonight. So let's go ahead. Let's get started.
I'm into it.
I became unprepared because I still have the plastic around mine.
That's totally okay. Honestly, we just moved, and so I have been limited on glassware, so I actually have a fun variety tonight. So I've got these 2 awesome ones that you sent us.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Talking. Oh, it's so good. I love Hudson.
Oh, amen to that. Just a couple of fun facts about this guy. So now, all of our whiskeys are officially kosher, which I'm very stoked to have that on there now. All of our corn and rye is from New York State Family Farms. This guy, so with the rebrand, our head distiller, Brendan O'Rourke, has been incrementally increasing the amount of corn and rye that we use. So we were 90-10 for a very long time. Now we're 95 corn, 5% malted barley. And so, shall we?
Excellent. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ding. See, and that's also, every Wisconsin person makes the ding noise, and I love it, because some people are just like, okay, yep, and I'm like, Wisconsin, everybody's like, ding, and I'm like, yes.
And you have to maintain eye contact, too.
Yeah.
And that's key.
Don't even have to put in the sound effect. Everybody just does it.
It's funny. These are the only glasses that I won't ding on the table either. It's just
But, all right, on to question 1 then.
Perfect.
Origin story. I think you actually have a really kind of cool origin story. But how'd you get started in the spirits industry?
Okay, so, I grew up in Wisconsin. For a very long time, I actually worked in the domestic violence awareness field. I was a children's advocate and I absolutely loved it. Honestly, some of the best work that I've ever done. I'm actually still involved in some ways. It turned what was a paid kind of little internship end up turning into a full-on volunteer kind of volunteer job after a while, after the funding ran out. Wonderful stuff. And when I hit 29, I wanted to change. And so I decided that I would move out to New York. And I have some family out here. My older brother is actually the chaplain director of the Bowery Mission. And it was I always really wanted to bartend. And so I came out here, and I was looking, I'll kind of sum it up. There's a whole bunch going on at the time. And I always wanted to bartend. And so I'd done like a little bit here and there. I mean, every Midwesterner is actually a bartender if you get down to it. Uh, and I definitely lied my way into a job and said I was a much better bartender than I actually was, because I was a terrible bartender. I was very cordial and people loved sitting there and hanging out. And it was one of the things, like, I understood the flavors. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen. The problem was I just didn't know any of the classics. And so I took like a week-long bartending school thing to get the mechanics down. Like the second I walked out the door, I forgot all the cocktails they taught me because they were just genuinely really bad. And so anyways, from there, I worked like 60, 70 hours a week. And then the rest of the time I'd be going out to bars. I'd be meeting folks. I'd be asking questions about recipes and everything. And it's funny, I love rock climbing. And a good buddy of mine said, oh, you should go up to the Gunks, which is basically the home of American rock climbing. And while we were up there, we were like, oh, I think Hudson Whiskey's around here. Like, we had tried it before and we went there. And that was my first distillery tour. And so you're looking back 2011, 2012, it was a much different distillery than what it is today. I mean, it's dramatically changed. There's like a dog on site at that point in time. Now there are two lovely, moderately obese cats there. But, Ralph was there, and he's just like this Ralph Lorenzo, the founder of Hudson Whiskey, and Gable, his son. They were both happened to be there. And they gave me a tour, and it was just such an awesome experience. And so I always made a point to go up there like at least once a year to go climbing and check it out. And I ran bars all throughout New York City for years. And then at one point in time, I just decided I wanted to try singing the whiskey gospel. And so I just kind of shifted into brand stuff. I sold a New York-based vermouth because I love the whole concept of like the Farm Winery Act and the Farm Distillery license. My mom and stepdad own this beautiful little farm in the Midwest. And growing up, I was never more than like a mile away from farmland. And do you know about the Farm Distillery Act?
I do not.
So it's actually something that Ralph helped create. So the way that it works is we got started around 2003, and Ralph wanted to focus on working with New York State grains and other agricultural products. Around 2005, we officially launched Hudson Whiskey. And so he spent, though, from 2005 to 2007 lobbying upstate, and the New York State farmers actually gave them their lobbying group. And so he helped create a thing called the Farm Distillery Farm Distillery Act, which subsequently created the Farm Distillery License. And in New York State, if you own farmland, no one can stop you from farming your land. And so, which I think is absolutely fantastic. That's amazing. And so Ralph's vision was, if people are going to come after him, follow after him, he wants to make sure that everybody that does so in a thoughtful and sustainable way, that New York State actually benefits from it. And when I say state, I mean the people. I mean the farmers, the brewers, the distillers. And so the Farm Winery Act came before this, and so that's where some of the modeling came from. But the way that it works is, if you use 75% New York State grains or agricultural products, fruits, veggies, et cetera, to distill, you can get a license. And at the time pre this, it would have been like $65,000 for a license, give or take a few. It changed it to $1,500 to get a distillery license in New York State.
Oh, wow.
And it's honestly pretty awesome. There are now 180 plus distilleries in New York State. Every single one of them has a license that we help create.
Wow.
That's amazing. It's pretty awesome. And it's one of those things where it just prevents people from coming up here, plopping a distillery down and taking for granted all of the amazing stuff that we have out here and not benefiting the farmers. When we first started, we were using one farm that was like about 5 miles away from us. And now last I checked, we were doing about 7 New York State family farms from all over the state. And so it's one of the cool things of like being able to like continue to grow and be able to make sure that we're still taking care of our people.
Yeah.
like across the board.
That's amazing. Cheers to that. So,
Cheers. I will go off on tangents, just so you know.
No,
I love when it comes to talking whiskey. I love it.
No, and this is perfect because that's just what we're about. It's just two friends now sitting at the pub having a good time because unfortunately we can't sit at the pub. So, but
Exactly.
it's just this is what it is. We're just two people sitting at a bar just having a good time. So
I'll drink to that.
actually, me too. Now, also,
that's really cool.
It is really good. I also read that. Is it true that you started bartending because you were lonely and you wanted to make friends?
Actually, yeah. It was one of those things like, so in college, I knew a bunch of people that, from New York. And I was like, I moved out here and my older brother's out here. I thought to myself, this is going to be awesome. It's just going to be like college. And then everybody had kids. I'm like, all right. But yeah, that was one of the reasons why I started doing it. And it's funny. I love talking with people. And like when I was 14, I started serving totally illegally. Shouldn't have done it, but it was money and they didn't care. And I had a realization, like, as long as I could make money off of my personality or like serving or being able to engage folks, I know I'd be okay. And I had such a great time doing it. And that I had gone from like such a world of like hands-on care and administrative work to doing this. And what I really fell in love with here was being able to create the cocktails. I mean, it was just, for me, it was a lot of artistic expression, and like I would go to farmers markets all the time. I had a great bar that I worked at called the Jeffrey, and they would give me like $200 every week. And they're like, go to the farmers market, go nuts. And I'm like, are you sure you want that? Because I will go nuts on this. And I did. And I made our motto was, let's get weird. People come in and I actually made a bunch of menus to the board. It was just like varying scales of like, let's get weird. Let's get really weird. Let's get uncomfortably weird. And each one's like priced different, and it's funny working with children with challenging behaviors for so long and then going to bartending and working with drunk adults. Turns out, super lateral skill set. But yeah, I gotta say, one of the coolest feelings when I was younger is like going to a bar and being recognized as a regular. And like, I had my neighborhood bars back west, and it was just so great to like feel welcomed. That the whole concept of cheers, 100%. Like just being like, I've got a home, I've got friends, I can go see people and like hang out. So down the street from where I lived in Wisconsin, there was a place called the Malt House. And I would smoke a chicken or a duck maybe like once or twice a week. And one of the bartenders was walking by and he smelled it because he would always walk by our place. And he's just like, he creeps back. He's like, are you the guy doing that? Like smoking duck? I'm like, yeah. He's like, I would kill for a little bit. It's been driving me crazy. I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come in and I'm going to bring a whole duck in and then we'll just kind of enjoy it. And so what would end up happening is I would go in there with the duck and people from around the area, they would we'd share it and he would just give me whiskey all night long. That's actually where my initial introduction to whiskey began.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Because which is, I get my thoughts together, but
hey, no worries.
You did an article or a podcast, and it was all about Friday nights. You would go out with your dad, and you'd go to the bar, and you'd get quarters, and you'd play Miss Pac-Man. And I'm like, I have the same story because, like,
yeah,
Sunday mornings, my mom would drop us off at church. And my mom was a chef, so she worked at basically the supper club. So like she would drop us off, my brothers and I, off at church, go to Sunday school. My dad would pick us up, and my grandpa owned a bar. So like I grew up in the bar world, but we'd come in, and my grandpa would give me and my brother a shot of peppermint schnapps because it tasted like toothpaste. And again, we didn't shoot it, but like we sipped on it all day. Mm-hmm. But he would just lay down quarters, and I would play on bumper pool, regular pool, and pinball. Like I remember the pinball machine, and if I ever come across one, I want to get it. But it was called Jackass, and it was just this guy riding a donkey, and when you hit the middle thing, the donkey would kick, and the guy would go up. But like that I love that. Like, and like when
absolutely.
I heard, like you were playing Miss Pac-Man, and I was like, that is fucking amazing. Like I was like, yeah, we're gonna be good friends.
It's so funny, especially in the Midwest, because like I don't know if they do this anymore, but like my dad was a factory worker, and he would finish work, he'd take his pay, he'd pick me up, take his paycheck to the bar, like we're saying, a stack of quarters. The bartender would like usually just give me a candy bar, and I would go over and play that. And actually, there's a pinball game there, the Tales from the Crypt one.
Oh yeah,
hands down my favorite. But and so funny because I developed this like love and maybe moderate obsession with pinball. It's actually a pinball museum in New York where you can go and just pay by the hour. Yep. I'm like, if I had that growing up, I would have had so much more money that I hadn't spent on pinball.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. I appreciate that you're from Wisconsin and you get that. It's so funny just thinking about that because it was a natural thing. You go to the bar with your kid, you hang out, and they could have a drink with you. Yep. I don't know if they've changed that law. I didn't want to drink at the time. Yeah. I actually didn't drink until I turned 21.
Okay.
But it just never really appealed to me, and then it appealed to me a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. We move on to drink 2, question 2.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Up next, do the right thing. This is what was our Manhattan Rye, and much like the baby bourbon, it's now 95% rye, 5% malted barley, age about 3 to 4 years. Also kosher, but also, if you look on the back, there is a little symbol above the kosher. That right there is Empire Rye. Ooh. So Empire Rye is a new AOC that we helped create with 5 other distilleries in New York State. The initial mastermind behind it was actually Chris from Copper Sea. And pre-prohibition, New York State didn't grow bourbon. It wasn't a thing. What they did end up distilling a lot of and growing a lot of was rye. And so I've even heard stories of George Washington distilling rye. I know and on top of that, he also distilled apple brandy as well. Yeah. And part of what this is, the South loves their bourbon. Kentucky's all about it. And we love our bourbon too. But, New York's big and bold. It's got a bit of a bite, much like rye. And so what we want to do is be able to kind of reach back to that cultural heritage and really bring back something and really own it. Yep. Fun fact, actually, our bourbon is actually the first bourbon distilled in New York State, at least legally and at least on paper. I haven't seen it anywhere else. I'm sure if somebody had done it already, they probably inadvertently blew their house up. Kidding. Don't distill at home.
Yeah, don't distill at home. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
I switched over to the Hudson Whiskey glass, so
I love that. And if you look at the bottom, you actually have our little logo down there.
Yep. Let's get it right.
Very nice. Yeah. Our old glasses actually had our bottle on it. So the bottle design is actually it's designed after like those old school apothecary bottles. I feel bad. I forget I'm pretty sure it was Brian's dad who was a chemist. And so he was the other founder. That was his like little homage to his dad. So, but I love it. And it's fun. We've actually made some fairly significant changes on this. So we dropped like 1/2 inch of glass from the bottom. We also slightly lengthened the neck. And you may notice there is no wax on top. Oh. While I loved it aesthetically, I got to say, I was doing a thing at Filson a while back, and it could be a little tricky to get off. And they just like reach over and hand me this. So like, this is for opening your bottle now.
Yeah. Be like,
but and there was struggle on deciding whether or not we should get rid of it. And my thought process on it was, while it is aesthetically pleasing, people like more than the wax? Get in their damn whiskey.
Yeah. Get into the whiskey much quicker is a lot more better than playing with a knife to open your bottle is still pretty cool, but like
it's pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. I totally love playing with a knife. Yeah, honestly, the dark chocolate notes on this are absolutely beautiful. The caramel, that cracked rye, like that freshly cracked rye. Like there's even like a hint of like spice on the nose, a little bit of cinnamon, clove.
Yep.
The thing I love about the back end, that dryness you get, it's not astringency from barrel. It's actually more ginger, cinnamon, clove, white pepper. It's like it's actual food flavors, like things you'd actually want to eat. It's not like you're licking a barrel.
Yep. No, it's so damn good. I love this. I was telling Dana, like, this is all she's like, have you ever had Hudson? And I was like showing her, I'm like, all my like, 5 bottles. And I was like, have I had Hudson? And I was like, yes. So like, yeah, the rye is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's like, you cannot go wrong.
You know, a couple of years back, we actually won the Chairman's Trophy in the Ultimate Spirits Challenge for Best Rye. And this is double blind. You know, you had Dale DeGroff and a bunch of other folks that were there, like people that know their business. And like, I got to say, that was just such a wonderful point of vindication. It's an incredible whiskey, and I'm so glad that we can age it up even more. When I first started with Hudson, you know, we went to the Distillery. I went there with Paul Coffey, who's the brand manager, fantastic guy. And we were doing the single barrel program where people would come in and they would get to choose their own barrel. Nice. And so it's such a fascinating process. There's so much to it. I mean, you can talk about putting, like the stretch you would have is like 6 months apart and all these factors that impact it. If it's lower or higher in the rick house, you know, even from the tree that they use, like there are all these contributing factors. And if you look at New York State, we have the summers of the South and the winters of Scotland sometime in a single day, you know, and it's absolutely, it's insane. Like, because you're essentially getting this accordion effect where it gets really hot, goes straight into the wood, then it's cold, and then it contracts. And we're pulling a lot out of it. Now, you can't cheat time. Honestly, it's got to be in there for a decent amount of time before it starts really getting good. But when we first started, we were using 3-month-old barrels, and I sat down with a friend of mine, and when I first started, we had tasted from 2006 until whenever I had started, and just seeing the progression and the growth was absolutely amazing. But yeah, you get a lot out of it.
That's awesome. I think that where you guys are located too, like you said, the seasons change, like you said, almost in a day, which I think is what gives you guys that unique, like Hudson Valley area is just so beautiful. The open and expansion of the wood, and I think that's what makes the whiskey so unique and so damn good.
It's beautiful. We're right by the Schwagunks River and like near the Wallkill. You know, you get a lot of humidity from there. And I gotta say, you know, so I had sat down and I tasted these whisks, like I want to say probably upwards of like 100 over the course of my time doing that stuff. And it was like 9 days with some of these. And I think with it being also pot still, like you have a lot of variance within that. And I think that really speaks to how incredible our blending team is, and our team in general, but like our blending team, they're CIA graduates, you know, and to clarify, not that CIA. Yeah. We're talking the Culinary Institute of America. I realize I don't want to confuse some of it. It's like, no, this is not government funded.
Yeah.
But their palates are incredible. And so like they're going through these different barrels and they're finding these ones to make sure we can get the best quality whiskey we can, but also keeping it consistent across the board. So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sure you have questions. Like I said,
no. Look, I can sit here and listen to you talk about whiskey all damn night. So like we are in no rush. We are good to go. I'm just enjoying some rye, and we can keep talking. And I'm in no rush.
That.
So. But all right. Well, on to question 2 then. Being an award-winning bartender, what's the weirdest drink order you've ever gotten?
Oh Lord! I mean, as I mentioned before, there were definitely some weird requests. And this one, I have a few, but like this one wasn't so much weird as it was just kind of made me cock my eyebrow. I had a guy come in. He was just like, I want the most high end old fashioned you can, not old fashioned, but the most high end Long Island iced tea you can make. And I'm like, bud, I'd be careful with that request. I mean, like, look, my number one rule is you don't judge someone on what they drink. If you like Long Island iced teas, I respect it because we don't know the story that drink or that whiskey or that vodka or gin or whatever means to them. So I'm like, I will do it, but I mean, I got some really high end stuff here. And so we had a bottle of Pappy there and some other very, very stuff. And he's just like, yeah, that's it. It's like, I want that. And I'm like, okay. I mean, like, this is going to cost like $100 or so. And he's just like, I don't care. Do it.
Do it.
I'm like, okay, sure. So I did it. Tipped very well. Super nice guy. And, you know, it's funny. And he would come in and he would do these things. And then eventually, as time came on, like kind of went on, we'd had these great conversations. He's just like, you know what? You pick a drink. You pick me something I'd like. I'm like, all right. And so I made him a traditional whiskey sour, you know, with the egg white and all. And I did the garnishes, the bitters garnishes and whatnot. And it was just like, yeah, that'll be $13. He's like, this is incredible. And I'm like, it's a classic. You can't take credit for it, but end of the day. Oh man. Well, what's the weirdest one that I ever had? Okay. So I used to have these guys that would come in all the time and they wanted vodka and Red Bull. And I just didn't carry Red Bull. It just wasn't a thing that I really wanted to have there. And so I realized that there was kind of a gap for what they wanted and what I had. So I took a bottle of the our corn whiskey, the Hudson corn whiskey, and I cold brewed it. And so I took our corn whiskey, cold brewed it, and from there I took some maple syrup, I took a chicory liqueur, and I took a whole egg. And so, you know, I whipped this up for him. And so I created this thing called the cowboy coffee. And so I don't know if you've ever gone like camping and made coffee over the campfire,
Yep.
that kind of like nice. And I don't know if your friends are assholes like mine are, but what we would do is someone who's ever in charge of it would intentionally forget the coffee grounds, and we would have to drop an egg in there, and we would draw straws to see who would eat the egg.
Oh.
And so, yeah. And so anyways, the concept came to me though, is just like sitting over the campfire and enjoying these things. So what I did was I took a bit of Wicker peat, the Balvenie Wicker peat, and I did a little bit of a rinse on it. And so from there, I ended up doing our cowboy coffee, which was just cold brewed whiskey, chicory, maple, whole egg, and a rinse of that. And then it just kind of evolved from there. Like I would pour like a whole stout in there. It got kind of ridiculous. The weirdest one that blew my mind. So I wasn't bartending at this point, but my coworker, Nico, such a good dude. Love this guy. We're all out drinking. And he's just like, oh yeah, my door guy, he loves this. He swears by it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. We'll have whatever Nico's having. And he's just like, and it gets there. I'm like, what is this? He's like, it's Hendrick's gin and milk.
Oh.
I'm like, what? I will say, not the worst thing I ever had. I will not be ordering it again. But, I will say, though, there are some absolutely incredible milk punches out there.
I was going to say, I've done a few milk punches through cocktails.
Yeah, but gin and milk.
Yeah.
Not as good as I thought it would be.
That is cool. Oh, I had
well, there is the other one that I was telling you about, the
slap in the face.
Yeah, the man of action. So I'll retell this.
Yeah.
So years ago, one of my very dear friends, Christopher Hunt, who is a brilliant graphic novelist, I want to do like a special shot, and so I was like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. Oh, I always did drink specials, and so I was like, I'm gonna do a shot of the night. And so since he's a graphic novelist and we both like Superman and whatnot, I called it a Man of Action after the Man of Action comics, which is Superman's first kind of comic. And the whole deal was, it was like for me and like 5 buddies. It's like, all right, you do a shot of Irish whiskey and then you get smack in the face. And we laughed it off. We thought it was hilarious. And it's like, all right, this is dumb. We're being idiots. Turns out, we had some other folks pop in that night. They were super into it. And then they just started bringing their buddies in. And they're like, do the man of action. Do the man of action. So they like throw down like 20, 30, 40 bucks. I give them a shot of whiskey and I'd smack them in the face. I was like, guys, are you sure? And so they loved it though. They thought it was hilarious. I ended up doing, was like 179 of these over my course of the time at the bar. It was ridiculous. I actually had people follow me to other bars and ask for one. And I worked at a very like kind of high end, bougie, strict place. And like a guy came in, asked for one. I looked over at my boss and he's just like, Mike, I'll smack you outside. Don't worry about it. But no, that is 100% retired. A married man can't go around smacking folks like that anymore. Yeah. So my wife tells me.
That's awesome. I think that's well. I'm sad that it's retired because I would have liked to partake of that just to say that I did it. So like that's feel like it's like a badge of honor. So it's just one of those things. For me, I had friends from Wisconsin come out, and I took them to Little Branch, which is where Whiskey Wednesday was born at Little Branch, and so table 1, my photos behind table 1, so like that's where. And again, I know we share a lot of people in common, so like like Maddie Clark and everybody that.
Oh, Maddie.
Yeah, he's such a great guy, and but he asked for an old fashioned, but he asked it with olives and mushrooms.
Oh, weird.
Which is
that's like going back there.
Yeah, it's like a 70s supper club Wisconsin thing, which is you do a brandy sour old fashioned. So, but like, if it ain't Corbel, it ain't a Wisconsin old fashioned. Exactly.
I had a woman actually come into my bar years ago, and she wanted an old fashioned, and the other bartender made her one, and I just saw this like look of like abstract horror on her face, and I was just like. It's like, do you not like that? She's like, it's not what I thought. I'm like, cool, I got you. And I went back and I made her one. I happen to have a bit of Sprite on me. It's not 7-Up, but And for folks who are watching who don't get what the hell we're talking about, in Wisconsin, an old fashioned is a much different animal. You are talking muddled cherries, you're talking muddled oranges, bitters, sugar. And then Corbel brandy. And if you want it dry, you have to use soda. If you want it sweet, you use 7-Up. And so I put one together for her, and I got to say, she just lit up. And I don't know, at that point, I felt like the floodgates open because my bar was lousy with Midwesterners after that point. They're like, oh, you're doing the good stuff here? I'm like, yeah.
You're selling the old fashioned crack? All right, cool. Let's do it.
I just tried to get some deep fried cheese curds going. If I had that, it would have been perfect. Fortunately, now more bars are making them, but for the longest time, like I had to make some serious sojourns. I had to have friends like smuggle me New Glarus beer and boxes. Yeah, I knew. And boxes of deep fried cheese curds.
Yep. Every time my brother comes out, I'm like, he's like, what do you want? I'm like, cheese curds. Lots of cheese curds. Go to Brennan's. I need cheese curds. Like, just get me cheese curds. All right. Question 3?
Question 3.
All right. What are we drinking?
We are drinking the short stack. Ooh, so the short stack was formerly our maple cask rye. What we do is we grab our Bright Lights Big Bourbon barrels. We send them up to Vermont to Al Wood's Sugar Shack. He fills them up with maple syrup. He does his thing. Then he sends them back to us. And then we fill them up with our rye. Let that sit in there for about a couple of months, or 1 to 2 months or so. And then we have the short stack. So, and this is kind of a nod to all those wonderful late night diners. I mean, who amongst us hasn't found ourselves at a diner at 5 a.m. eating pancakes and drinking a hot cup of shame, It's funny. As we were trying to think of names for this, one of the ones that came up was French toast.
Okay.
And I was just like, and the person that I was talking to about this, he was like, "Oh, it's such a great idea." And I'm like, "You're not from America. French toast isn't the same thing down here as it is from where you are." Like, don't get me wrong, I love me some French toast, but at that point in time, you might as well just throw some cereal out there and make it a cinnamon French toast crunch.
There you go.
Fortunately, go ahead. Cheers.
Oh, no, I was going to say cheers, but
yeah, no, let's drink. I am 30% funnier and 40% more interesting once you've had a drink. So the thing I love about this, the barrels are properly cleaned before we put the whiskey in there. And so we actually give it a little bit of a steam to make sure that it's clean. We don't want like a chunk, like a layer of maple. We just want the flavor from the wood. And so as you can tell here and from our Do the Rye thing, the core of it is still very much the same.
Yep.
But that beautiful caramel, like the sugars up front that you had there, have now been replaced with maple. If you have a little bit of water on you, what I would recommend doing is throwing a couple drops in there. And since all of our whiskeys are non-chill filter, and we distill on the grain, which you get a lot more of the fats, oils, proteins from this, it's a lot thicker. And so when you drop a little bit of water in there, it begins to come out of solution, and the nose changes. It's like the way the world smells after the first big melt of spring.
Excellent. Totally. Yes.
We're talking science in the glass here, my friend.
We are, and it's so good. It's
this is actually one of my favorite all-time whiskeys.
Yeah.
And you may notice that there's slightly more here gone than the rest.
So fucking good. Like, this is like a hot toddy whiskey. Like, this is fall in a glass. Like, this
exactly.
Is just what it. Oh.
I gotta say though, for me, a person who loves just a solid, straightforward spirit, this is done absolutely on spot. You know, there's it's not like we've added any sugar. We've just gotten that sugar from the wood.
You get the whiskey, you get the sweetness, you just get fall. Like, you're out in the middle of the woods, you're by a fire, and you're just watching the stars go by. Like that's just like perfect sipper all night long. So,
you know, my rule of thumb here is there's no bad way to drink whiskey.
Agreed.
Only bad people. But no, I wholeheartedly mean this. Like when I was when we were doing stuff up at the distillery, we'd have these like large groups that would come through and we would do these tastings, especially like for the single barrel thing. You know, I had a guy who was just like, I love Dr. Pepper in my rye. And one of his coworkers is like, that's wasting good whiskey. And I'm like, but I hate to tell you, I love Dr. Pepper and rye. And end of the day, it's your time. It's your space. It's your experience, you know, and you shouldn't let anybody rain on your parade. So enjoy your whiskey the way you want to.
Exactly. It's your money. You drink it however you want. So like, I mean,
yeah,
I didn't tell you how to make the dollar. I'm not going to tell you how to spend the dollar. So
it's funny. We were a big group of us. We were out and about drinking some just really great scotches. And I had hit my point where I was just like, I don't want to drink any more straight spirits. But my buddy was just like, look, we're going to have the Glenfiddich Grand Cru 23 year, which is absolutely beautiful scotch. And so when I ordered one, I was like, you know what? I want that in a highball. And I got to say, not to blow the bartender's spot, but he gave me a look. He's like, are you sure you want to ruin your whiskey like that? And I'm like, it's not ruining it. End of the day, like we put ice in our spirits, much like with Hudson, I think is a great example with it being non-chill filter. You know, we are just releasing all those oils. But even that being said, you know, when our whiskey comes off the still, it's at 140 proof, goes in the barrel, comes down to 115 proof, goes into the bottle, 92 proof. We are adding water all across the board. You know what? I almost wanted to order ginger beer like that. And then I was like, give me a ginger beer and a Glenfiddich.
There you go.
Which I will say is damn delightful.
I'm sure.
But, you know, and we had a great conversation. The guy's like, I hear you. I appreciate it. It's, at the end of the day, enjoy it how you want to enjoy it.
So, all right, question 3. How'd you get the nickname Sharp?
So it's funny. So when I was a kid, I wasn't thrilled about having the last name Tschetter, just because in the Midwest,
yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but kids can be assholes. And I got teased a lot for it. And I remember going to my dad one day and I was just like, Dad, do you ever hate your last name? He's like, no, I absolutely love it. And I told him what was going on. He's like, look, if someone's being mean to you, just be an asshole back, just be sharper about it. And so I developed a very sharp wit because of it, a very sharp tongue. It definitely influenced my sense of humor for a long time. But it's funny. And so but there was a good chunk of time where everybody just called me Jacob out there. Then I moved to New York. I started bartending again. And Souther Teague actually he's the one that started calling me Tschetter. And I was just like, okay, I'm cool with this. And so he started doing it. And then my younger brother moved out here. There are 5 of us. And so my younger brother moves out here and I got him a job bartending at Holiday. And Danny Neff, who ran that bar, I don't know if you know Danny, fantastic human being. He ran Holiday for quite some time. He was on Damon Bolte's podcast and they were talking about bars and everything. And they picked up they're talking about my younger brother, whose nickname was Mild Cheddar. And then Sharp Cheddar came back.
Excellent.
And so it's like, the Mild Cheddar's a great dude, super hard worker. His brother Jacob, Sharp Cheddar, depending on when you catch him, also a great guy. Like, thanks.
So, all right. Question 4. What are we drinking?
We are drinking Backroom Deal.
Oh, yeah.
And so just a quick thing, the Backroom Deal and the Short Stack are, for the moment, both Distillery exclusives in New York. They will be coming out of the market next year. I gotta say, this guy right here, though, the Backroom Deal is absolutely stunning. So the whole story with this is, get another love letter to New York, but the kind of feel behind this is just like, this is old New York, like the building of it, the creating of it, where those backroom deals were being made in those smoky, cigar-filled, whiskey-fueled rooms with sacks and suitcases full of money being exchanged. But I gotta say, the whiskey's a lot more elegant than that, though. And, it's so interesting. What we do is we send our bourbon barrels out to Isle of Bay in Scotland. What they do is they fill it up with a beautiful, beautiful peated whiskey. When they're done, they send it back to us, and then we finish our rye in there. And the nose on this is fantastic. And like I've had other peated ryes before, but the ones that I've had most recently are direct peat, where they peat the malt, and they're good. But I gotta say, the balance of the heat, the peat, and the rye on this, it's perfect. Like the heat, peat, and spice, it's balanced.
And this is new to the lineup. Like this wasn't a previous bottle. This is brand new, right?
This is brand new.
Yeah.
We've it's one of those things where Brendan always has secrets, like hiding around the distillery, of things that he's like been experimenting with. I gotta say, when I first had this, I was like, when are we putting this out there? When can I buy a bottle? Like, just send me a case. That's all I need. I'll shut up if you just give me a case of whiskey, a case of this. And it is fantastic. There's a cocktail, the one I mentioned before, that's inspired by Sam Ross's penicillin, that I call In the Spotlight, which is 2 parts of our Bright Lights big bourbon, 3/4 lemon, 3/8 honey, 3/8 ginger syrup, and shake, serve over ice, and then you top with a 1/4 ounce of the peated rye. Absolutely stunning.
Well, this is fucking amazing. So cheers.
Cheers. Ching ching.
Oh.
Right.
That's so
and that's one of the things that's absolutely smashing about this. Like you get the peat. It's there. but it doesn't overtake that beautiful rye spice and the sweetness in here. It's one of those things, like I see the spice and I see the smoke kind of on either side. In the center, you have the sweetness, and then it just wraps around and intermingles together. Then you got a bird.
Yeah. Are there other peated ryes out in the market? I don't think I've ever really seen a peated rye before.
I've seen one other, and but it's not like this. It's one of those things where they didn't finish it in another barrel. They ended up doing a direct peat on theirs. And so, but we're, as far as I know, and you can quote me on this, don't quote me on this, we are the first to do something like this in the States. Definitely in New York, too. So,
yeah, I have not tasted anything like this. This is really good.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Because, again, I've just trying really hard to, get into the peated again. Because, as you can tell by my background, I'm very much an Irish whiskey kid. I love a lot of Irish whiskey, and like that, just trying to really get into the peated Irish, and like even like this. But this is this is so good.
There is, give me 2 seconds here. There it is. This is one of my retirement whiskeys. And by retirement whiskey, I mean it's one that I'm either going to drink when I retire or we'll maybe sell it off. Knowing me, I'll probably just drink it when I'm retired. But this is a wedding gift from my dear friend Ben Wald, who is a fantastic bartender. He's down in DC. Have you ever had the Tullamore Dew Phoenix?
I have, but not the 55. Like not that one.
It's beauty.
Yeah,
absolute beauty. Okay. No, that is not for you, Cat. Sorry, my cat loves whiskey.
No,
that's why we named him Rye.
There we go. All right, so on to question 4. Not even midnight yet. We're almost done, but I'm still really enjoying this. What's your closing song at the end of the night? Like, what's the to wrap up the bar? Like, what is? Do you have a closing song?
Do yourself a favor. Go on Spotify. There is a playlist there called Bar Sing Along. This is a playlist that I started doing when I was bartending, because I worked in a bifurcated bar, and one side of the bar loved terrible music, and I felt like it was like terrible Swedish pop or whatever, but it was like very techno-y, and I'm like, cool. I have a completely different vibe over here. I don't want that. So I went out, bought my own speaker, and then eventually my boss just like, no, we're just going to set this up so you can have your own proper system. So, but Bar Sing Along is fantastic. Oh man, I have a few. Rainbow Connection.
Someday we'll find it.
Call Your Girlfriend. My extra late night one where it's just like, you gotta go. There's that couple there. It's like, y'all being sketchy.
Yeah.
One of y'all better call your girlfriend, because I am a monster. Where is it? There's one that was just so perfect too. Oh, and being from the Midwest, Closing Time.
Closing time.
Yeah, but after a while, like it just turns into like the most awkward sing along you could ever have, and it's absolutely fantastic. If I wasn't singing, what's that song by 4 Non Blondes? What's Going On? What's going on? Terrible night. Yeah. Oh man, that was such a good one. But yeah, honestly, like my closing ones were always just kind of like, let's make it a little awkward, a little slow. I love you, but you gotta go.
On to drink 5. Question 5, what are we drinking?
We are drinking ginger beer. It doesn't matter, because honestly, a good ginger beer, it speaks volumes. And what it really matters is the glass that you're able to use for your ginger beer. I'm going to use Reed's because it's an old classic. But when I have my ginger beer at home, I like to have it in my mushroom mug.
All right. So I don't have a cool mushroom mug, but I think I can. Oh, see, wasn't mine.
Yes. Hold on. Where is it?
Ding. Ding. I will use. I have a mermaid tiki mug.
Hell yeah. That's perfect. Fever Tree is actually one of my absolute favorite ginger beers. It's so good.
Why ginger beer?
So I actually don't drink that much. And one of the things for me is, like, you know, when I started bartending and started getting into like doing brand work, you know, it's a slippery slope. And so for me, and also having worked in domestic violence field and working in the social work field, I've always maintained and heavily advocated for mindful drinking. Like, end of the day, enjoy what you drink, know your limits, know when it's time to go. And, you know, and if I was out with friends where I had such a good time and I didn't want to go, ginger beer is my go-to. You know, it's just one of those things where ginger has always just really spoken to me. I love the spice. And one of the first cocktails I made or came up with or whatever was at this bar. And I was juicing ginger, and I use dark agave when I make my ginger syrup. And I got to say, like, the texture and the mouthfeel of it is absolutely perfect. And so you just do like 3/4 that, 3/4 lime juice, or if you're doing just that, then you just double that up. Shake it, top with some seltzer. And it's just a beautiful drink.
All right. So
yeah,
I need to show you a photo. My desktop.
Funny. So that's Paul Tschetter. Paul Tschetter was the first Mennonite, along with my great-great-grandfather, to come to America. And so they actually came out here just after the Civil War around the 1870s. And they went to South Dakota, found the Promised Land.
Our fifth question, flip the coin question. The coin will tell us the answer. But here's why I say, so you say. Is it true that you're actually a Highlander and your real name is Paul Tschetter and that you supposedly died in 1919?
That's a fuck yeah.
You are a Highlander. I knew it. I knew it.
So funny. Fun fact, literally anyone with my last name, I am almost certainly related to.
I figured. I mean, look, you
so
guys look really closely together. So
I like to think I got more of my looks from my grandmother's side. No, I'm kidding. We're all very handsome. We're all very lovely people. Super modest too. Oh man, I'm like the most modest person you'll ever meet.
Excellent. Jacob, thank you so much, or Paul.
Yeah.
Say thank you so much for joining us. 5 drinks down, not even midnight. I hope we can drink together face to face very, very soon. Yeah. Love your products. Thank you so much for joining us. To you, my friend, until we can drink together. So
exactly. Stay safe, wear a mask, and be mindful when you drink.